So this video shows how we can communicate with nonverbals.
Project, we wanted to do a little bit of research into verbals and nonverbals and the importance of both to different people. So for our project, we created a small survey to hand out to students across the school that just kind of asked them a few questions about the two. And then we also went around and we did a few interviews of a few of our peers to kind of discuss the importance of verbals or nonverbals to them, as well as which one they use more. And that was just kind of the general overview of what we did for our project.
So for this part of our presentation, we're going to talk about how verbals and nonverbals affect us in our everyday lives. So we're going to address how it affects us in our workplace, in school, and in sports. So I'm personally going to address how nonverbals and verbals affect us throughout our school day. And so as we go throughout our school day, you can usually tell like the more popular kids from the less popular kids, and a lot of this is because of their nonverbals. Like if a new student moves in, they're usually kind of aware of the social groups and the social norms as they watch the popular group be more confident with their verbals as they go throughout school, and how they dress with their nonverbals. It's usually more obvious that they are popular, whereas some others who may be less popular, may be more quiet, more timid, maybe they like slouch more with their nonverbals, dress a little bit differently. And so this separates us and becomes obvious what social norms we're in. As well as with our schoolwork, usually people who are smarter in that subject, or maybe they just enjoy that subject, when they go to that class, you can tell they brighten up a little bit, they're excited to be there, they're more engaged. If they go to a subject they maybe don't want to be there, then they're not as interested, they're not as engaged in what the teacher is saying. And so for these reasons, nonverbals and verbals both affect us throughout our school day.
In this section, I will be talking about how verbals and nonverbals affect us in our everyday lives, and something that really stands out to me is in volleyball. With nonverbals, it's very obvious when you know like how a team's confidence is versus your own confidence, and it can really affect the way you play. Also, you need nonverbals to signal to each other, and also the coaches and the refs. It's really important that without the refs' nonverbal communication and without them pointing and doing all those things, you can't play the game, and that's how many sports go. You need to be able to non-verbally communicate, because if you were trying to verbally communicate what you're trying to say, it'd be too loud in the gym or out on the court or in the field, and you wouldn't be able to hear everybody and hear the refs and what their calls are. So that's why non-verbals are very important when it comes to sports. Also, verbals are very important as well, because without them, the coaches wouldn't be able to tell you how to like improve something that you need to fix when it comes to plays. And it's important when refs need to blow whistles and call things out loud as well.
So personally, I've worked at a Subway for over 3 years now, and after that amount of time, you kind of get a good feel of the nonverbals and verbals that many people give you while you're making their sandwich and making their food. So to go over like the majority of the verbals is you can pretty much kind of tell like how people are feeling the day that they come into the restaurant and whatnot and order their food. You can usually kind of tell who's just kind of there to get their food and leave and whatnot, or just kind of like actually like are having a good day or whatever. The nonverbals, though, I feel is a lot more prominent in a restaurant or just any sort of customer service type area. Is you can usually tell who is having a good day just by the way that they walk or the way that they stand while they're talking to you. And tone of voice is usually a pretty big one. Like every once in a while, you'll have this one person who'll come in and they'll talk to you and they'll be like, "Oh, I want this and this and this," but it's the slight deepness of their voice or whatnot that you can usually tell whether or not they're having a pretty bad day. Or if they're really high-pitched and perky, it's usually like you can tell if they're having a really good day. And that's just kind of my experience with verbals and nonverbals in a workplace. And usually, like I said, after quite a while, you can usually tell exactly who's having a good day and a bad day just through the nonverbals.
I work at a local restaurant called Henry's Drive-In, and because Panguitch is full of tourism, we get lots of different people from different cultures that come in, and so they don't all speak English. And when they order, I've noticed that they use a lot of nonverbals. Like if they need a drink and they can't like say the word drink, they'll do something with their hand like this to like do a cup or something, and they'll like point to the menu or use their hands a lot to try to describe to me or the other worker what they want, and that helps us to understand what they need because they don't know how to speak that language. We went and asked a few students in our school different questions about verbal and nonverbal communication. We asked some questions like if they thought nonverbal communication was important when they were communicating with others and how it affects their lives. And then we asked them which one they think is more important and how they use them in their lives.
So, what factors of nonverbal communication do you use to comprehend and or recognize someone's emotions?
I rely a lot on like facial expressions. Like I tend to look a lot at the mouth and the eyebrows. That sounds kind of weird that I don't look people in the eye. But yeah, I feel like those kind of communicate a lot. Like, you know, I rely on that.
Okay.
When I'm speaking, I use my hands a lot, so I kind of look at that. That kind of tells me a lot about how passionate they really are about what they're speaking about. I think the face says a lot too. Like eye contact is a big thing for me. I hate when people won't like look me in the eye when we're talking. That bugs me a lot. Yeah, no. But somebody else is looking at my eyebrows. No, but that's something I rely on a lot, non-verbally.
Okay. So next question is, how important do you feel the ability to read nonverbal facial cues are to you, and why?
I think it's really important because people don't always say what they're thinking, and like you can't like interpret that always through like the way someone speaks. So like, you know, if someone's giving you this facial expression that they really aren't that interested, then you know like, hey, maybe I should like drop the conversation, whatever. It doesn't lead you down this really awkward path.
Yeah, like she said, like people don't always say what they mean, you know. Like, have you ever been talking to someone and they're going on and on, and you're like, yeah, you know, like it's just like little things like that, like picking up on when people are uncomfortable. I read something like people's feet or whatever, like direct where they want to be. So if they're talking to you and their feet aren't pointing at you, then they don't actually want to talk to you. I don't know if that's true, but like, I feel like little things like that can just be indicators that, oh, this person isn't interested in what I'm saying, or you can pick up on how do I make this person think I'm interested in what they're saying. Like those are just little things. So especially like nonverbal things can be really big for like interviews, like job interviews and stuff like that. Because like I said, people don't always just like pick up on what you say. They also pick up on how you're presenting yourself. And so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. For me, the difference between verbal and nonverbal body language is that nonverbal body language is more you can't really think about it. Sometimes it just happens without you even knowing it. Where verbal is you can lie, you can say whatever you want, but when you're doing body language, it's more natural, and people can pick up on that more than verbal.
Alright, so if eye contact would be one, because if they're not looking at you, they don't care as much, or they're not as focused. But if they are having eye contact with you, they are more in tune and caring about what you're saying. Appearance can be like your body language. If they're facing you, they're more in tune with the conversation. As if they aren't, then they aren't caring as much. And the tone of voice can be if they're it can show how much they care about it. You can tell if they're being sarcastic or mad or upset or happy.
Do you think verbal or nonverbal communication is more important?
I think verbal is because it helps you explain more.
I think nonverbal is because you can actually show instead of just tell.
Yes, I think that nonverbal communication is very important because you know if someone's being serious or if they're joking or if they're being emotional, and it helps you know how to respond. If you should reply with be sympathetic or if you should be sarcastic and joking back.
Okay, so for the second part of our project, we did a survey, and so it's just a quick 11-question survey that we gave to a lot of students in our school, and we handed out 50 of these. And then we took the results from that and evaluated them.
Some students skipped a couple questions, and some of them did multiple answers. If they didn't know which one they preferred or thought about more, then they just answered twice. So some of the answers are not like the exact same, how many have been answered. But to start off, number one, the question we did was, do you think verbal or nonverbal communication is easier to understand? And 30 said verbal, and 9 said nonverbal, so 77% chose verbal. And then I think that makes sense because it's easier to tell if someone's telling you something directly than to just kind of infer what their actions are showing you.
So then for the second question, it was, do you pay attention more to what people say or to what their nonverbals are telling you? And so 15 people said that they pay more attention to what people say, and then 21 said that they pay more attention to their nonverbals, which is 58% of people believe that when they are speaking to someone or having a conversation with someone, their nonverbals come in to their mind and what they pay attention to more often.
The next question is, what kind of nonverbal communication do you most often use? And this one was pretty close between all of the options. The first option was volume of voice, the next was tone of voice, hand gestures, and then smile. And the most chose one was tone of voice.
So then question number 4, how do you express anger towards someone? The majority of people said that they yell at them, which is a verbal communication. The other options were ignore them, roll your eyes, and those were both pretty close second.
The next question is, how might you express kindness towards someone? And you say hello to them, help them, talk to them, or smile at them. And smile at them had the most with 22, and then there was only 2, 8, and 14 as the other ones.
So the next question, 6, how can you usually tell someone's mood? And the majority of people said that they can tell people's mood by their tone of voice, which kind of relates back to question 3, where most people said that the most often used type of nonverbal communication is your tone of voice. So since it's the most often used, I think it makes sense that it would also be the most or the easiest to understand someone's mood by.
The next question is, why might you smile at someone in the hall? And the most chose one was friendly gesture over to eliminate awkward moments for no reason or to say hi.
So number 8, when someone lies to you, how do you know that they are lying? We gave them 2 options, verbal and nonverbal, and 74% of them said that you can tell someone's lying by their nonverbals, which most people aren't going to tell you they're lying, so that makes sense.
And then for questions 9 and 10, they were just write-in questions, and they weren't multiple choice. So we looked through the papers and the surveys, and we found which ones were the most commonly used as the answers. And so the question is, how do you think your body language can affect a conversation? And the most common answer
was to tell if they want you to talk to them and how comfortable they are.
So the next one, how might your facial expressions affect the conversation? And that came up with a lot of similar results. And so it was shows your mood and whether you like the conversation or are engaged in the conversation. So people look at other people's facial expressions to kind of decide how the conversation should lead.
And the last thing we asked on the survey was on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being never and 10 being always, how often do you think you communicate? And so we took up all of the average answers, and the answer was 7.6. So some were really low, some put 10, some put like 3 or 4, and like 6. And so some people didn't think they communicated that much, but even though they feel like they don't because they're quieter in class, we're always communicating, so that answer should be pretty high.
So from this survey, we concluded that nonverbals and verbals are both very, very important in our environment and in our communities. And although a lot of people have different opinions on which ones matter, in conclusion, as you look at it, you can see that they're both important. Nonverbals play a bigger part in our communities, but verbals play more of a demanding part in our communities.
So as a review, we gave out 50 surveys to different students in our school and asked them to fill them out honestly. And then we interviewed a few different students in our school and asked them their opinion on verbal and nonverbal communication.
From the surveys, we learned that many of the students thought that the verbals were more important than the nonverbals, and they didn't realize how important nonverbals really actually are.
And from the interviews, we learned that both verbals and nonverbals are used in everyday life by people in our school, and we learned that both are equally important to the majority of those people.
So in conclusion, we found out that many people think that verbals are more important than nonverbals, but nonverbals are just as, if not more important than our verbals in our everyday life. And nonverbals are used more often than verbals. So next time you have a conversation with someone, make sure to see what their nonverbals are, not only their verbals.